Good evening. This time I'll call to order the business meeting for the Faribault Public Schools School Board here on October 28th, 2024 at the Faribault Public Schools District Office. We welcome all of you here in attendance and those of you viewing online. We have our agenda here. Ms. Steves, will you determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
Thank you. Will you all please remove your hats and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, approval of the agenda. Motion for approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Boudreau, any discussion? Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 3, recognition, awards, and presentations. 3A, presentation of the MCEA 2024 Project Award to the District for Multicultural Adult Drivers Education Program. Am I supposed to wait till 7 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
I'm so glad I read this before now. Okay. So we will wait until approximately 7 o'clock, and the presenter will be Ann Faribault, the MCEA board member and Winona Community Education Director. With that, we'll move to 3B, the Faribault High School Strategic Plan presentation. So Mr. Joel Olson and staff, if you'd like to come up and welcome. And again, board members, we'll have Mr. Olson and staff go through the presentation and then any questions afterwards. So welcome, good evening.
Thank you. Thanks, board. So we're presenting tonight on our strategic plan that we developed this last year. We had a group of staff come up with issues that we want to address at the high school, and then throughout the summer we had staff, students, and parents come up with a strategic plan outline. So if we could move to the next slide. And you can keep going. So I put in there our district goal, our MCA data from last 2023. One of our goals is to graduate 90% of our students by 2026. And you'll see the last 2 years we've gone up. And at the high school, 85% of our students graduated within those 4 years. You can go to the next slide. Is that for me? Thank you. Good work. Our building goal is to increase the percentage of 9 through 12 students who pass 100% of their classes from 66% to 75% this year. Our attendance goal is to increase our students who attend 90% of their classes from 53% to 60% this school year. And this is our outline of our strategic plan. And it starts with me is the message that we want to send to all of our staff and students. You'll notice at the top the green boxes, our FHS values, our FHS beliefs, and our FHS culture. The first 2 boxes, our staff, we surveyed those staff, and Joe Timmer did that last spring, and those were the top pieces of information that our staff felt was important. And then this summer with students, staff, and community members, we worked for 2 days working with them on coming up with what does a positive high school culture look like. So ultimately, we want to increase a positive high school culture. In those 3 areas, I've got a little bit to go yet. Those 3 areas that we feel like if we lift those up, this will increase our school culture in staff well-being, student well-being, and college and career readiness. And those strategies for each one of those areas, and you can read those, but basically improving instruction, greeting students by name and building relationships, school-wide practices, consistent implementation of our cell phone policy, and a restorative mindset towards discipline. And we're using a behavior framework that really looks at those things in the classroom for Tier 1 behavior, where teachers are able to make those relationships with kids, and also when things aren't going so well, they're the ones that address those in the classroom. And then if they need us to step in on those tier 2 and 3 behaviors, that's when the administration come in. So I break down those pillars: staff well-being, what we believe, and this is the on the left side, is if teachers feel like they have autonomy in their classroom, are connected with not only kids but with each other, and that they feel competent in their instructional practices. We feel if we lift those up, that'll increase staff well-being. And strategies that we are using, instructional coaches, our wellness teams. Mugs and Mingling is a Wednesday. Every Wednesday our staff get together for coffee and fellowship time before school. We have staff that are doing book clubs. SOAR, we're modeling this after the elementary and middle school programs. Anna is one of our teachers, one of our math teachers, and she's leading our new teacher mentor program in second and third year teacher group. And I'd like Anna just to talk about how that's going.
Thank you, Joel. Like Joel said, my name is Anna Udvig. I teach math at the high school. We revamped the new teacher program this year, and we also revamped the second and third year teacher to make sure that our new to building staff have a support system. So we have our new to building staff first years get together every month, and we check in with them, making sure they are feeling supported in what areas they might feel they need more support on, and then we touch base on things that they might feel they need further assistance on in the building. We have some really awesome teachers in the building here for new to building this year, and then second and third years as well. Our second and third years, they meet about once every 3 months, and we have the same kind of setup. We check in with them. We provide them any resources they ask for, and then kind of an open discussion format as they have the experience at least a year or two under their belt at the high school, and just making sure that they don't feel that they're all alone on the island now that they're not at a year one stance anymore, but that they still have that support group behind them.
Our next pillar is student well-being. We believe that all students, if we can work towards building trusting adult relationships, and if they're engaged in extracurricular activities, whether it's sports, clubs, after-school programs with community school, Falcons Beyond. So those strategies there, you can see Zello, our RISE program, which mentors students, the Falcons Beyond program. PGC is a program for ninth graders that we have juniors and seniors mentoring ninth graders. Of course, activities and athletics, our cell phone away for the day, and again, our SOAR program, where we build those behavior expectations in each of the classrooms. And finally, Pillar 3, college and career readiness. That's what we're here to do, is get kids prepared and ready to go at life after high school. Our instructional practices, our classroom practices, and our counseling department all play a part in that. Zello, again, is an online platform for kids to identify career interests. They do matchups with interests versus careers, colleges. It's a very comprehensive program that we're starting to implement, not only with the counseling department, but we're pushing it out into classrooms and for teachers to learn that as well, so they can speak to kids about career and college readiness. Our DECA program, is strong. Rotary, Strive, and Interact. I went to a meeting last month, and there was over 30 kids there taking part in that. Our Career Pathways, our College and Career Center, led by Mary McNellis. We do college visits, business tours, and then our community partnerships with different businesses. Military come into the building and meet with kids. So innovation and meeting the need of our students. So we identify the needs that our kids have, and we ask teachers to kind of showcase some of the things they're doing. So I put a couple of slides in here about that. We've noticed a lot with our newcomers. Language is a barrier. So with the help of Katie Schultz and others, we've developed a bilingual TA program. So students can become a teacher assistant, but they're there for translation and helping in the classrooms with our newcomer classes. And we started this in September. And as you can see, they get paid to do it. They can earn credit for it. And you can see some of the classes that those students are helping out in. This is one of the new classes we did this year. to meet the needs of our newcomer students who need an art credit, and that's a required credit from the state. And so we started a guitar class, and so a lot of newcomers and other students, we have one section of it in the fall, or in the first semester, and one section in the second semester with over 30 kids in each of those classes. We actually had to turn kids away because so many kids wanted to do this guitar class. Go to the next one. Global Music is the other class we added this year with Ben Beaupre and the choir. So Global Music is also for our newcomer students, where it's not a performing class. It's a learning about different cultures and different music styles from around the world. And in this particular one, we have some students that are helping one of our students from MSAB during the class, and they're just there to help the kids in those classes. So a shout out to those kids that are part of that class. And this is another one for Anna to help out with. They're doing building thinking classrooms, and she sent this in to kind of showcase one of her classes and what the kids were doing. And she's a big part of the building thinking classrooms model, and I'd like her to talk a little bit about that.
So like Joel said, this is my calculus students, most of them, and there's lots of research around the building thinking classrooms new teaching style. As yes, students and people can learn by drill and skill. However, they're not going to develop the skills to critically think. And if we want them to be a greater asset to the community once they graduate school, which that's our purpose, right, is to prepare them for college and career readiness. That is why we are now transitioning into building thinking classrooms based on the research. And it started in the math discipline, but it can be spread across multiple disciplines. So essentially, I gave them the big theorem, the big concept. There's lots of theorems in calculus, if you haven't brushed up on calculus skills in a while. And then I gave them a function, and I said, okay, prove it to me. So there's very little kind of me directly instructing them, as essentially it's been proven they just mimic it. They're not learning them critical thinking skills. So it gives them the opportunity to learn the theorem truly what it's for, instead of just copying down just case-by-case basis, and then can make it more applicable to different situations. These students here, they then presented to their groups, explained their different functions, and then I made them take a picture.
Thank you. So who helps with all this? We have different teams that we developed this year, and I'm going to have Joe talk about that.
Otherwise, I'm just standing here doing nothing. All right. So if you recall back at the slide, a few slides back, the green slide that had our 3 pillars there, we also had 3 strategies that we intend to use this year and in our years upcoming. Classroom practices, building our classroom practices. Anna just touched on that. Reformatting our team structure at the high school so that we can meet the needs of all of our students. So here are the different teams that we have reformatted, both to align with what's going on before the students come to us, but also just to make sure that we're meeting all of our needs. So we've got a culture and discipline team that is going to be starting up here in the next couple of weeks. We intentionally waited just a couple weeks to get that one going. Our site leadership and department chair. This is a reformat to make sure that our all of our site department chairs see themselves as leaders in our building, but also we're building their leadership skills in preparation for PLCs each time that we've got our Falcon days, our staff professional development days. Our staff wellness committee, we had that going last year. A revamping of our attendance team, where we've built a more clear and structured attendance action plan for our attendance team to follow, so that way we can follow up with students that have some of the most significant attendance needs, and then we can make sure that we are getting the supports in for those particular students. An intervention team, this is new for our school at the high school this year. We are working to build behavior interventions for our students. Right now we're starting with behaviors. We'll be shifting to academic interventions in the later half of the school year. So we are building interventions and focusing on meeting the needs of all of our students. Our group is responsive to what we are seeing behaviorally in our building and making sure that we are equipping both of our students and then working with the staff members that are impacted with some of those needs. And then Mr. Olson does some student, parent, and staff focus groups. Right now, the one that I don't remember which, an attendance focus group right now with teachers, just using the expertise in the building to build new ideas so that we can bring that to the attendance team. And then you might have seen we have a new behavior framework. Mr. Olson referenced that a little bit earlier. That behavior framework is helping us build consistency in how we respond to incidents or different types of behaviors, and then making sure that we've got an intervention so that we can actually reteach and guide students along the way when they make mistakes. We have had lots of meetings with parents, both for attendance and other issues that we have encountered in our building this year. And then our fantastic social worker team, we have 2 fantastic social workers in our high school. They are doing they're one of our front line when it comes to some student needs that we have. We have what we call a crisis group where we can plug a student in right away if that student is feeling like or we feel that student needs something in conjunction with their parents and collaborating with their parents. And then we've got some long-term skills groups that are working to build skills, build resiliency in our student population. Obviously, we have not seen the fruits of the long-term one yet because it's not done, but that's something that our social workers are doing right now.
That was a quick overview of this plan, and I'm appreciative of Anna and Joe to be here tonight. So, got any questions?
Board members, it'll open up to you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Boudreau.
this is a little unrelated to your presentation, but could you update the board on, Principal Olson, on how the no cell phone policy is going? I mean, we'd love to hear
Yeah.
how that's going and
Sure.
what you've observed.
When we first started it, we thought we'd be taking 10 to 12 phones per hour. Our most, I think, so far is 14 in a day. So on average, it's anywhere from 8 to 10 or so each day. And for the most part, we ask teachers, because I'm rounding with the teachers as well, and that's one of the questions that I ask is, how's that going? And for the most part, they say it's going pretty well. Every morning, I try to get on the announcements right away as soon as the bell rings, and I say, okay, this is your warning. Put your phones away, get your class, get your stuff out, and get to work. And so then the teachers then will, they might tell them to put it away, and then they put it away or not. But for the most part, everybody says it's going well, and they're very thankful for implementing this year.
Thank you for that response.
Yep.
And it's still early, so you've worked the bugs
gotta
out
keep-
of the system, and
just keep
I'm
be-
glad to hear positive.
Consistency is the key.
Yes,
Yes,
it is.
yep.
Thank you.
What else? Dr. Moore.
Yes, for the, you mentioned the 85.3% graduation rate. Now, that's for 4 years. The students, we're not counting the students that maybe graduate after 5 years or 6 years.
Correct. That was just high school data.
That was just
Yeah,
the
because
4 years.
when we looked at the district information, when we built that goal for the district goal, it was ALC and adult basic ed in those classes as well. But for this one, I looked it up on the report card, and that was just high school.
Yeah,
Yep.
this was just, but it's probably more than that if after 4
It's
years.
the percentage will go down if you include probably ALC and adult basic ed.
Oh, and I was going to mention too, for Pillar 1, staff well-being, I know sometimes there are long-term substitutes. Are you including those in that Pillar 1 staff or not?
Long-term subs, like teacher subs.
Yeah,
You mean are they part of all of that?
yes.
Yeah, so like we have people that might be out on maternity leave, so they're part of all of those
So
groups, and yeah,
that's good.
we need to do a better job of the short-term subs and making them feel welcome and wanting them to come back. Yes,
Right, that's, but you're working on that.
we are, yes.
And I do like the idea that you have the guitar classes. I think music is very important. So, and another thing, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, for the student TAs. I really think that's a good idea because they have a little taste of teaching experience. And I know of individuals that have, way back, they've got their teaching degree and then they got in the classroom and decided that they really didn't want to be a
Oh.
teacher. And so I think that's a good thing because then they can get a taste of this to see what's
Yep.
Oh, one more thing. With the focus groups, you mentioned parents. Did you get quite a few parents?
I did, last year I had a parent group that I met with about once a month.
Okay.
And then we were going to follow up with that same group this fall, just kind of tell them how we're doing, where we're at. And so we'll get that going again. But otherwise, yeah, we meet every 2 weeks with teachers on, like Joe said, like for now we're looking at vaping and attendance and how's it going and what do they see and what are some ideas that they have. We research other school districts to see what they're doing. And then I had a couple kids today say, when are we going to get this going again? And so that kind of pushes me to get the students back involved again. And actually, we're meeting next week. So,
Dr. Robichaud.
It's not a question, just an observation. Thank you, this is very comprehensive. It appears that you are attempting to change the culture of the high school to address some issues that we've had discussions about in the past. Number one is academic and attendance. You can't have good academics without good attendance. And you're not separating those. You're working at it very diligently. So the efforts that you're putting forward in attempting to address a cultural shift at the high school, you're to be commended, you and your staff.
thank you.
I have a couple questions,
Yes, sir.
and I should know this. If you'd go to Pillar 2 and 3,
Mhm.
The strategies, Zello, Xello. I should know
Zello.
what it is.
So it's an online platform. So in the past, we've used, what did we use? Naviance. So that's a program that kids would use to submit transcripts for college applications, things like this. And through some work with Katie Rodfold and others, we determined Zello was going to be the new platform to use. And we've done it. We've practiced with it. And you can go in as an adult. You can go in as a student and go through it. And there's been things when we were going through it this summer that were like, I think I could do that job. I think I could do this job. Maybe I should look at that job. And there's just so many things that kids can look at, and hopefully as we build out over the next couple of years, starting in 9th grade, we get those kids on it right away, and even backing up to middle school, if they can get into that and learn about it, they can start taking classes that kind of meet the interests that they have, and they can also look at colleges and things that they want to do eventually.
Interesting.
Joel's got.
It also involves some academic planning, like Mr. Olson was referencing, planning out some classes. Eventually, our plan is that we have all of our students plan out their 4 years through Zello, and Zello can then connect with our with Infinite Campus and help students just get them in the right courses, so they're not just choosing courses because it looks like a fun title.
The second question I have is, as Dr. Robichaud alluded to, student attendance. So increasing student attendance, hard to have good academics without good student attendance. So when you meet with parents, are they aware that their student is not in attendance? Are the excused absences and unexcused working? I'm just kind of curious. It seems like to attend classes, to get that percentage up to make sure they attend most of the classes.
I'll say it's pretty rare for a parent to come in and be completely blindsided by the fact that their child is not going to class as much as they thought they were. And simply because Infinite Campus does do automatic, we've got it set up to do an automatic either text or phone call to families each day if their child has missed, or I don't think it's set up for tardy, but if their child has missed one class period, it should be calling those families each night. Now, that does not mean that some parents don't get those messages, but for the most part, parents are aware, and that's where it's coming together to partner to help find the resources. What's going on? How can we best support you? You know your child the best. You know what makes them tick or not tick. How can we help you? How can the school support? How can you support the school? that's been how most of those conversations have gone as we set up those attendance action plans with those families.
Great.
Yep.
I saw that some nodding of heads in the audience when if they get the call saying your child was not in attendance third hour or fourth hour, whatever. So I'm going, okay, it works, but I didn't know what your strategy was to get parents.
Well, and even to add to that a little bit with attendance and academics, we have a great relationship with Jake and the ALC, and we can make a phone call to Jake and say, can you come in and maybe this is an option for that student, different educational environment, and Jake's at the ready to come over and meet with us. So big shout out to Jake too.
Excellent. Further questions, board members? With that, I thank you. Excellent
Thank you.
presentation and appreciate it. Next, we'll move on to item 4A, Student Board Representative, Ms. Jillian Huberty.
Hi, so I just have like a recap now, it's going to be a long time ago, but of our homecoming week, which if you remember, was September 30th to the 4th. So we changed some things up this year with homecoming, and we kept some big things the same. So that the Saturday before homecoming, we did our neon dance, and this year we did it at Jefferson, and we ended up raising about $1,500 from the dance alone for student council. And that was a neon theme this year, and we had pretty good turnout, obviously, with raising that much money. Then, like normal, we had Powder Puff, which, if you don't know, is girls playing football out at Bruce Smith Field on Sunday. And then one thing that we did different this year was with coronation. We moved coronation to the PAC during 7th hour, and we had it be just juniors and seniors. So you could go if you wanted, and that's where we did like our crowning our king and queen. And the high schoolers really liked that, especially the people on court. They found that it felt a little bit more formal because they were up on stage like getting crowned versus, being in the middle of the gym floor. It's kind of awkward. And the people who wanted to go and see their friends and see their siblings could go. And the ones who didn't, especially those younger class, they tend to not be as invested in that, weren't there. So we had a crowd of people who really wanted to be there and see that. Tuesday, we changed something up. Instead of having activities be after school, we did them during Falcon support time. So we have Falcon support time every Tuesday, but this week of homecoming week, we added it to be Tuesday and Wednesday. So the boys did Powder Buff, which is boys playing volleyball. So then we had like seniors versus freshmen and then juniors versus sophomores. We saw a really great turnout with that, and a lot of students came because it was during the school day. No one had to like go after school. There was no outside events conflicting with it. So we found that was a really great way, is having it during the school day. Wednesday we did dodgeball. Again, with that we got great turnout. That was really fun. And then we did seniors versus staff, which we also saw sparked just a lot of like enjoyment from students, because who doesn't want to see their teacher throw a foam ball at a senior, like at the football players? Like, that's fun. So we got a lot of enjoyment with that, and a lot of just like pep and people excited to be at our Pep Fest. Thursday was tour of the schools, so that's where the sports captains, court, the band goes around, and we went around all the different schools. And then Friday we had our Pep Fest, and we just added games to that, and we saw a really good turnout this year too. We added some new games, but overall we raised a lot more money than we have in the past for our student council, and we saw a great amount of like participation and student excitement at our Pep Fest, which was really awesome to see. So that's what I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments, board members? Great, thanks. 4B, school board members. Before we get into this piece, I'm just going to remind board members to pull, as I'm getting a little communication from the back, please pull your microphone down and towards you so we can, your teacher voice echoes right into the microphone. So any items of information from school board members? Dr. Robichaud.
Just a couple. I did have a chance to participate in a staff development experience a week or so ago I guess it was a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The activity was to actively engage students, and it was interesting to see hear the dialogue that teachers were engaged in, trying to identify more active ways of engaging students in their learning process. The other experience was I spent probably about 45 minutes with the principal at Jefferson walking the building, and I didn't get a chance to go into the classrooms, which I will next time. But it's interesting to see the dynamics of the classrooms and what our teachers are experiencing. So opportunity to get those two experiences were very, very rewarding for me.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. Anyone else? Ms. Steves?
So I am a part of our local Rotary chapter, and this is the first year that I have had the time to sign up for Rotary Readers. So for the last 3 weeks and throughout the school year, I will be spending about 45 minutes to an hour with some first grade students at Jefferson. I have a first grader. This is like the most enjoyable hour of my week, and I can wholeheartedly, confidently say that these kids are trying their best, and the giggles when they get through a page makes my day. So I would encourage board members to participate in this program or just get into classrooms and start helping.
Great. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Boudreau?
I wanted to mention this last month, but I think it's still okay to mention. We have a publication, or it's online. It's called Around 656. And I could not believe all the activities that were on this for September. And photos with it. I mean, it was really well done. It's very positive for our district. I wish we could have it here, but I realize we don't all have time for that, but it is professionally done. I'm just looking at homecoming activities, Roosevelt 5th grade, the high school, the middle school, booster club, elementary and middle schools on PBIS initiatives. I took notes, but it was too many things. I didn't get them all down. But just Jefferson School, Lincoln SOAR, the skits they had at Jefferson, and their SOAR Council. I mean, I can go on, but I hope our board members are seeing this, because it enlightens me and it helps me know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, how could we possibly know all of these events are taking place? So I can't wait for October, but I just thought it was very positive. I don't know if all districts do that. I just wanted to mention it.
Thank you.
So thank you for Around 656.
And our editor is in the audience.
Right. I believe that's Ms. Danette does that. So thank you, Danette. Just excellent job. Yes, it really does inform our public and us as well. It's great to read. It really is.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that there's contributors from all schools.
That's
so
correct.
Thank you
Yep.
all for doing that. That is really great.
Great stuff.
It's awesome.
Anything else from board members here? Seeing none? Okay. Mr. Benty, Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm going to be reading is all of the pieces that we have done in the last month outside of homecoming, since you went through homecoming. So I attended Lincoln's Unity Day celebration. The goal of Unity Day is to unite students, parents, educators, businesses, and community members to convey that bullying is unacceptable and that every student deserves a safe environment at school, online, and in the community. Our Lincoln students and staff walked all the way to Central Park, where Miss St. Croix Valley shared a powerful message about embracing our differences, and they created a unity chain, and we ended the celebration united in song. Also, building literacy skills at a young age, as we know, is incredibly important, and it can be fun too. So the families at Roosevelt Elementary, our school kindergarten Spanish immersion class, got to see how their child learns to read and write at school and learn ways to support them as readers at home through games and hands-on activities. The fall session of ECFE, Early Childhood Family Education classes, wrapped up, and fall 2 sessions started earlier this month. Our ECFE program supports Minnesota families with children from birth until kindergarten, providing resources and education to help parents nurture their child's development. Faribault ECFE offers various classes tailored for new parents and families, available morning, afternoon, and evening. And anyone that is having their first child, I can tell you, I know, even though I was the oldest, I greatly would have welcomed a parenting class. So we want to give a huge thanks to the Faribault Police Department and Faribault Rotary Club for providing winter clothing for, anybody want to take a guess how many kids? 243 Faribault kids.
Great.
It's uplifting to witness our community come together to create such a positive impact. We want to thank both organizations for all that they do for our students, families, and our community. I was able to attend the Jefferson Walkathon, which I'm so much happier it's a walkathon and not a jogathon. They raised a whopping $7,725 thanks to businesses, community members, and students. The money raised will help pay for field trips, busing, and other events throughout the year. Miss Lemieux's third graders performed a little reading theater production about Harriet Tubman. It was a fun way for students to continue to practice their reading skills. We have an exploring ag class that's been learning about livestock and the dairy industry over the past 2 months. And earlier this month, the students were able to see how robots are improving the dairy industry. Thank you to Emily at Matoga Lake Dairy for the tour. So they went on a tour out there. The September SOAR winners at Lincoln Elementary School, and I'm going to have to do an investigation because I believe one of our board members' students has maybe won twice already. So I'll be looking into that. But they faced off in an epic kickball showdown against the Faribault Police Department, and they won. The students played their hearts out with their classmates, cheering them on, and excitement didn't stop there. After the game, the Faribault Police Department officers made it even more special by signing the students' T-shirts. We want to thank everyone who made this an unforgettable experience possible for our students. Roosevelt Elementary School kindergarten classes had a fantastic time exploring Riverbend Nature Center. They learned about the characteristics of plants and animals while using 4 of their 5 senses. To engage with nature, making meaningful connections between their classroom lessons and the real world. Students in Mrs. Peterson's Fish and Wildlife class at our high school had an exciting hands-on learning experience last week. Jessica from Great River Greening led our students in planting native seeds in our prairie area, which is out back behind our high school. They discovered that native plants play a vital role in promoting biodiversity, preventing erosion, and conserving water. After planting the seeds, the students covered them to provide protection and support their growth. As spring arrives, the seeds will begin obviously to sprout, and students will have the opportunity to see the impact of their efforts. Our early childhood development class visited Little Scholars Academy here in town to observe and interact with the infants there. They're learning the difference between objective and subjective observations. Faribault's Grow Your Own program took its first field trip to Winona State University. Students explored the College of Education, toured the campus, and enjoyed a meal at the Student Dining Commons. For those of you who don't know our Grow Your Own program, we have a couple different ones. Some of them are at the student level, which is scholarships and money that is available for students to go become teachers. And some of them are actually available at the adult level to go back to school to get your teaching license. So we have a couple different Grow Your Own programs in place. After learning about Johnny Appleseed and the life cycle of an apple in their Scholastic News magazine, Roosevelt first graders walked to Trump's apple orchard to see the apples growing on the trees. They also saw pumpkins, gourds, sunflowers, and squash. Mrs. Weens, Faribault High School students in the Human Growth and Development class had a fun visit with Miss Elfsted's and Mr. Joe's second grade classes at Jefferson Elementary. They enjoyed reading books and playing games together, creating memorable moments of fun and learning. Also earlier this month, our adult education students in Miss Ann's book club read A Long Walk to Water and learned about the Dinka tribe from the southern Sudan. In class, they engaged in interactive photo gallery walk, matching captions to the corresponding paragraphs. This activity helped them expand their English vocabulary and deepened their understanding of the main characters' experiences and the challenges faced by the Dinka people. It was a meaningful way to connect literature with real-life cultural insights. Also, Roosevelt first graders took a trip to the library and they got their first library card. So, our Faribault High School 2023-2024 yearbook is on the Pictava Honor Roll. Out of 6,000 yearbooks produced last year, we made it in the top 100. So, and then finally, Jefferson kindergarten classes got to go on a field trip to Como Zoo. This experience allowed students to work on kindergarten standard learning about plant and animal parts. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Benty. I think we can see that we have a lot going on within our classrooms and within our schools, as many of us have pointed out, and great things are happening here in Faribault Public Schools. Move on to agenda item number 5, public comment. This evening we have public comment. Mr. Bill Spike. Mr. Bill Spike, we should talk about volleyball, and as you come up here, if you just introduce yourself, and we'll go on from there. So, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You're welcome.
My name is Bill Spike. I have a junior daughter, Mackenzie Spike, in high school. And I think the volleyball program is way off course, big time. We have 7th and 8th graders playing in the volleyball in high school, but our high school girls can't play it. And I'm sure my daughter wasn't the only one that would like to play that didn't get to play. And she played, she went to FLS, so she started playing 3rd or 4th grade, played the whole time. Goes to summer camps for it. Never no indication that she wasn't good enough to play. So, but I see certain people with certain names, their kids are all playing. Or if their dad or mom's a coach, they're playing. And I guess I spoke with other schools. They said there was no limit to how many could play on the junior varsity team. So why cut any of them? So they don't get to play as much as some of the other ones or whatever, but ain't this about teaching them teamwork and friends, and it's high school. But they want to treat it like professional volleyball, then why don't they act professional? When it comes to cutting them, some parents got called in with their students and had a sit down. I got a phone call from my daughter to come pick her up. And I find her behind the high school by herself, hiding and crying. Real professional. I reached out to Mr. Benty in regard to some of this. He reached out, I think, to Mr. Olson and Shane Gunderson, the athletics director. I received a call from Mr. Olson. Mr. Gunderson never did, so I gave him a call. Said, how about having a little sit down with your head coach, you and your head coach, to go over some of this, and I think some of the other parents might want to be in on this meeting. You know what he said? Well, I'm not going to have a meeting so you guys can team up or gang up on my coach. But it's okay to gang up on these little high school teenagers, huh? Girls? It's okay for that. Real professional. Well, let's act like we're professional if we're going to treat high school volleyball like it's a professional sport. I think it should be where all the girls get to play. What's wrong with that?
Mr. Spike, your time is just about finished. Would you just please wrap
All
up?
right, well, I want to end this on one thing, and I'll never forget this. I saw a survey once of schools. They surveyed 102 schools in the state of Minnesota. Rosemont was number 1. Faribault was number 101. I'm starting to see why. Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 6, the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the minutes from the September business meeting, employment, additional assignments, other, and authorization of payments, transfers, and investment accounts. Motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. No discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Move on to agenda item number 7, the District Advisory Committee. There's no report. Agenda item number 8, 8A, Policy Committee. The Policy Committee minutes, the report. Ms. Steves and Dr. Moore. Anything on the Policy Committee minutes?
I think the notes reflect the entirety of the meeting. Mr. Benty, could you refresh my memory on why the rationale behind tabling policy 537?
If I remember correctly, there were a lot of concerns that came my way about 537, and we were looking to use that time to focus on the library, the library books policy 606.5. So the one that was tabled will return on, I think it's February, if I remember.
February 4th.
February 4th, yes. So.
Anything else on the Policy Committee minutes, board members? With that, we'll move on to 8B, the first reading of policies. So policy 905 is advertising. Policy 1005.6, equal access to school activities. Policy 418, drug-free workplace / drug-free school. And policy 901, community education. Any questions for members of the Policy Committee regarding the first reading of policies? Seeing none. We'll move on to 8C, the second reading of policies. With this, board members, as I sent you emails regarding, we do have a proposed amendments for 2 of these policies. So I'm going to set aside or pull at this time 3 of those 3 policies. That is policy 540, acceleration policy and procedures. Policy 515, protection of privacy of pupil records. And I've also been asked to pull policy 616, school district system accountability. So with those 3. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of policy 308, administrator / director evaluation. Policy 416, drug, alcohol, and cannabis testing. Policy 503, student attendance. And policy 532, use of peace officers and crisis teams to remove students with IEPs from school grounds.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And discussion. Discussion on any of those policies? Discussion? Last call for discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Now we'll go back up to policy 540, acceleration policy and procedures. Motion to approve policy 540, acceleration policy and procedures.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Moore.
Yes, I guess I did put forth an amendment that we do leave, and when we say scores on grade, it's step 2 on the first page, initial screening. It's the second, number 2, scores on grade level nationally recognized standardized scores. And the amendment was to leave the second sentence in. Scores should be at the 95th percentile or above on the math portion to demonstrate high
Okay.
achievement in math. One of the concerns.
Nope, stop.
I'm sorry.
So your motion is to amend policy 540, and your amendment is to leave as is
Yes,
acceleration policy and procedures 540, the acceleration process, step 2, initial screening, leave as is. Scores should be at the 95th percentile or above on the math portion to demonstrate high achievement in math. That is your motion for an amendment. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And now discussion. Dr. Moore, will you please address your motion, please?
yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is that we're not even lowering our initial standard, we're eliminating it completely. I think we have to have some kind of statistical standard in looking at this. And so that's why I wish to keep that standard in. As I said, because when the number 2 states scores on grade level nationally recognized standardized tests, it eliminates the statistical standard. We don't even set a statistical standard on that, and I think we should keep that in.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Boudreau.
I have a question as to why that was removed. Is there some logic I'm not aware of?
With that question, I'll refer to,
I don't know if anyone has an answer.
okay.
Sorry.
So one of the things, I can just bring a little bit of enlightenment to Ms. Julie Hall, our Director of Teaching and Learning, is out this evening. She's having a medical appointment here in the next couple days. But one of the pieces is if you look further into step 3, it will talk about the 75th percentile. So one of the things that we were looking at is when we lock ourselves into the 95th percentile, you might say that my student is physically perhaps age-wise a year older or 9 months older than everyone else in the room. They're more mature, or they have, they're maybe perhaps bored with the curriculum. We were very concerned with a 95th percentile is an incredibly, ridiculously high amount. That means out of every 100 people that take it, you were in the top 5. And it was specific to math. So if the student had a bad day, or if the student wasn't exactly at the 95th percentile in math, they would not be considered to be accelerated, barring any other circumstance. So when you go on to step 3 on page 3 lays out the different committee assessment and reviews, and what assessments they will be looking at, what they will be looking for, and what the committee will focus on based on whether that student should be accelerated or should not be accelerated on an individual basis. Does that answer your question, Mr. Chair?
I believe it does.
Okay.
So to summarize for me, it doesn't put just a percentile from an achievement test there, but you consider other strengths that child may have. You might be very strong in visual arts, etc., reading that, but not in math, but you might still accelerate. I mean, not just relying on a test per se.
That is correct. Looking at other aspects of the student's behavior, maturity, academic levels in other areas.
To follow up on that, Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Boudreau.
does this mean that more people would be able to participate in the acceleration program?
More students would be
More
able to
students.
apply to be
Okay.
accelerated if they chose to be, or if they thought. And it's
Okay.
actually the students' families that do this.
Okay. So it allows more participation?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Moore.
I don't know if this is referring to, since Mr. Benty brought it up, the 70, as they said, demonstrates off-level, which is, look at more than one test, I guess, standardized testing performance at or above the national 75th percentile as compared to students at least one grade level above the current placement. I do appreciate that, the fact that it's in there. I guess my concern is after it says students scoring below the 75th percentile will be considered based on additional criteria being met at a high standard. And I don't know if this is the time to bring this up or after the amendment, but I am concerned about that, I need clarification. What is this additional criteria and what is the high standard? I guess it's very subjective, and I'm not sure if this is the time to bring this up now, or we just bring up the.
I think maybe bring it up in a
Okay,
little bit
yeah,
different.
and that's what I'm concerned about. As I said, I'm going to read it again. Students scoring below the 75th percentile will be considered based on additional criteria being met at a high standard. I'd like to know what the additional criteria, what it is, and what is a high standard. It seems like it's just a relative term. It's a very subjective, and that's what I'm concerned about, the subjectivity of that. And so that's why I still wanted to put in a statistical standard. So,
Thank you.
because it seems to negate
Yeah.
that.
And I do wish to be clear,
Yeah.
this is not the school deciding this student should be accelerated, this student should stay in their class. This is the parents coming forth after they have seen how their child performs, seen their test results, and saying, I believe my child should be accelerated. And then the school looking at that, and you'll notice on page 3, looking at that with the parent, and there's, at the top there, number 1, there's a written acceleration plan that's completed for the child, and copies are distributed. So there's an in-depth look into this based off of the parents' wish to do this, not the school's wish to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you for the, Mr. Chair, thank you for the clarification. So this would be the parents bringing this up then? And then they would be, because I can see that the parents would be.
Yes, the parents must start this
not the
process.
schools.
It is not the schools that start this process.
All right, then,
Okay, we have a motion and a second for an amendment to leave as is. Score should be in the 95th percentile or above on the math portion to demonstrate high achievement in math. Any further discussion? We will be voting only on the amendment. So a yes vote will be for the amendment. No vote will be against the amendment. With that, Ms. Steves, I'm going to ask you to do a roll call on this.
Linda Boudreau,
No.
Linda Moore,
aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
No.
Cassie Steves, no, John Bellingham.
Nay.
Passes 4-2.
Okay, so we are back to the
Fails 4-2.
I'm sorry, thank you. Motion fails 4-2. We're back to our original policy, approval of the policy 540, acceleration policy and procedures. We do have a motion and a second for that. Just one comment, or one thing I have here, in all my years in teaching in the classroom, I do remember just one student that was accelerated from 5th to 6th grade, and that was initiated by the parents and went through quite a process, meeting with teams at the elementary, meeting with counselors. A lot of different factors went into that acceleration, and did quite well, happy to say. So anyway, with that, but further discussion on the approval of policy 540. Dr. Moore?
Yes, Mr. Chair, yes, I want to thank Mr. Benty for that clarification, because I think I was assuming that it was the school that was doing this, but if it's the parents, I think I would be okay with this then. And then, of course, there is a procedure that, from what I've been seeing, that you're meeting with the parents, and there's other teachers, and I think even a psychologist there. So I think I'm okay with that clarification.
Any further discussion on the approval of policy 540? Last call for discussion already. So with that, we have a motion for approval of policy 540, acceleration policy and procedures. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll move on to policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records. Motion for approval of policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Discussion? I believe, Ms. Boudreau, you have put forth an amendment. Would you like to propose that at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an amendment. I hope everyone has observed that amendment, and the amendment starts on page 24. It is under private records not accessible to parent. What the amendment does is it adds that the responsible authority must not conceal or deliberately withhold information to a parent regarding their minor child's request to use a different name or pronoun, to be recognized as a different gender, or request to receive gender-affirming care that involves medical interventions. And I list the interventions not limited to puberty-blocking medications, hormone injections, and sex-altering surgeries.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau, for the amendment. Do we have a second to that amendment?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And discussion. Ms. Boudreau, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I
Parent-
just have a clarification? What page?
Page 24.
I did send it out in an email as well, but thank you.
Just a second here.
Let's see.
So
It may be on page 18 in certain,
it would
maybe.
begin on page 24 after the language from E, 1E. So, and it would insert a number 2, and then that 2 would have A and a B of the items I just read. So, parents are important partners to a school district. Is it okay right now, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
please speak to your motion. Thank you.
And I think it's important, first of all, I will say that I am not implying that any of our staff or our responsible authority is not doing their job properly or not treating parents in a respectful manner. But this is an issue that's happening all across our state and nation. Some schools have agreed to have policy in their district that says parents do not have to be told. I think that's a very deceiving approach to dealing with parents, especially with their minor child. And I believe that the parental authority must be at least respected and honored. And there also is a 14th Amendment that gives parents rights to direct the upbringing of their children. And those rights are violated when schools do not inform them of changes, some important changes like that can impact the child's life in a very serious manner. It's a very serious manner, I'll just say it that way. So I think it's important. I know that Mr. Benty, as our responsible authority, is a good man, but I don't know how long he'll be here, and I don't know what other entities may be engaged. So I believe this is an important amendment, and 75% of people in this nation, parents, believe it's important, and I present it to the board and hope the board feels it's important as well. Thank you.
Ms. Boudreau?
I would like a roll call.
Oh, further discussion, please.
Has this amendment been reviewed by our attorneys, the verbiage?
So this is not. So I looked into this a little bit today, and whatever the board decides, I will definitely look into. What I would suggest is if the board does vote to change this language, that you do it after I've had a chance to consult with our attorneys around it. The reason I say that is because this focuses more on FERPA, and the amendment is more around HIPAA. So I don't know what the crossover like that looks like. It does talk in here on section D. I should say on section E of that same area, it talks about Minnesota statutes that fall under 144.341 to 144.347. Gender affirming care is not protected underneath those. So that is not one that would fall in there. As for the names and pronouns, that one, there's already a system in place. So that we have, that parents know about it. So if a child, just to explain, if a child comes in and says, I wish to change my pronouns, or I wish to be called this name instead of this name, there's a form that we have them fill out, and it must be signed by the parent in front of our administrators. It's not just a form that they can bring back. And then before that is then changed in our student information systems, which then can be seen for everyone. So this idea that a student is able to come to me as an administrator, or even as a teacher in the district, first of all, it's only certain people that have rights to be able to go in and make those changes. And when they do, they are immediately seen by any parents that are in the system or log into the system. So none of that stuff is hidden in any way. One concern that I do have is every time we look at changing policies, we always want to look at what potential conflicts within the policy it might create, where the policy fights against itself. So the amendment here potentially would fight against Section D there, and it says, so this goes on to say, the parent access would be in the best interest of the minor data subject. In making this determination, the responsible authority shall consider the following factors. And I'm jumping down to D. It says whether the data in question of such a nature that disclose it of it to the parent may lead to physical or emotional harm to the minor. We do have, unfortunately, I must say, I have been, as a principal, as an assistant principal, as a dean, and even as a teacher, I have had students come to me and say, Mr. Benty, this is how I see my life going. I feel that perhaps I don't have sexual feelings like other people do, or I don't feel that way. Under this amendment, I would have to immediately report that. That would potentially conflict, because I've had a lot of students say, because my very first question is, have you talked to your parents about this? And I believe that that's probably the very first question from the vast majority of the adults that are in our buildings, all right? And unfortunately, sometimes I've had them say, no, because my dad has said or my mom has said this or that, okay? And this is an experience that I've personally had in 2 districts now. So I just want to lay out for the board that is a potential conflict within the policy itself as well. Whatever the board decides, I will take that language to our attorneys. I will have them look through our policy 515, and I will have them give what they think is in our best interest legally, so that we're not in violation of state statute.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Benty. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Boudreau?
so the item that Superintendent Benty mentioned with the letter D, the small d, that would still be applicable to this situation, in my understanding, number one. And number two, what you mentioned, how you've dealt with students in a situation, delicate situation, and is that protocol that you're using, or is it, it's not in writing? So.
And that's why I brought that situation up, because when I read number 2 on the amendment, it says the responsible authority, which would be a teacher or a counselor or an administrator or really any adult in the building or in the district, must not conceal or deliberately withhold information to a parent regarding their child's and then it says request to use a different name or pronoun, or to be recognized as a different gender. So I can read that one of two ways. I can read that as, if you ask me about it, I can't not tell you. Or I can also read that as saying, if that information is told to me, I have to immediately let you know. Which then, that's the conflict that I would see potentially with subsection D.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's compelling, but sounds like you are concerned it could be, but it doesn't state that. So, I still believe it's an important amendment, so.
So just to offer a suggestion, would it be acceptable to have Mr. Benty review the amendment with the attorney and put it back to the policy committee and come back? Or we're on the second reading, and so this is not the first time that this policy has come before the board. And if Mr. Benty has a fear that this amendment could be kind of fighting with the policy, I guess that would be my preference.
Mr.
Dr.
Chair.
Moore?
Yes, you mentioned the authorized representative. Under the definitions, it mentions authorized representative means any entity or individual designated by the school district, state, or agency headed by the official of the control of the United States, and it goes on and on. I guess I was assuming it would be probably, it's an individual designated by the school district. I was thinking it was, more like the superintendent. I don't know if we do have a designated person, but so that, because it said authorized representative, and that's on page 1, it's under three definitions.
Yeah, so I think the difference in that is when we're referring to data information requests, the designated person is me. And those are some pieces that we're clearing up, so that would be more for records requests. That would, or data information that would come to me. When I, we're getting into some of the other pieces down here, private records not accessible to parents. I think that is something that falls more at the building level potentially. So
We do have a motion and a second for the amendment as presented. Is there any further discussion?
Could the amendment be
Robichaud?
reread, please?
Pardon me?
Could we have the amendment reread?
Ms. Boo, do you want to do it, or I can do it if you'd like?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The amendment is as follows. After the 8B, private records not accessible to parent, after language of 1.e.insert, 2, the responsible authority must not conceal or deliberately withhold information to a parent regarding their minor child's A, request to use a different name or pronoun to be recognized as a different gender, or B, request to receive gender-affirming care that involves medical interventions, including but not limited to puberty-blocking medications, hormone injections, or sex-altering surgeries. That is the amendment, Dr. Robichaud.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, we'll vote. Ms. Steves, will you do a roll call on this amendment, please?
Linda Boudreau,
Aye.
Linda Moore,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Nay.
Cassie Steves, nay. John Bellingham.
Nay. So the motion fails for lack of a majority. So we are back to policy 5, a motion. We do have a motion and a second for approval of policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records. Further discussion? I'll count this as a second discussion point on the policy. discussion? Probably already pretty well hashed out. Okay. Ms. Steves, let's do on this one, let's also do a roll call for approval of policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records.
Linda Boudreau,
Aye.
Linda Moore,
No.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. John Bellingham.
Aye.
Passes 5-2.
Thank you.
5-1.
5-1. Nope, 5-2.
4-2.
4-2.
4-2,
4-2.
sorry. Math is hard today.
Move on to 811, policy 616, school district system accountability. Motion for approval of policy 616, school district system accountability. Also move approval of that policy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And discussion. Dr. Moore, I believe you had, you wanted to say something.
So I do have some concerns. It's on page 5, I believe. It's under E. It's called, I'll just read the paragraph if I may. Evaluation of Student Progress Committee. A committee of professional staff shall develop a plan for assessment of student progress, the graduation standards, as well as program evaluation data for use by the District Advisory Committee to review instruction and curriculum, cultural competencies, including cultural awareness and cross-cultural communication, and student achievement at the school site. This plan shall annually be approved by the school board. I guess, as I have stated before, some of these terms are quite subjective, and I know in research you have to have operational definitions. And what is to me, it's what is cultural competencies, what is cultural awareness, what is cross-cultural communication. I just don't think that these are very subjective. And I think before I would approve something, I really want to know what I am approving. So that's why I have an objection to this, and I'm going to be voting no for this.
Thank you. Further discussion? Further discussion on policy 616, school district system accountability? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 4-2. In the negative would be Dr. Moore and Mr. Olson, and Dr. Robichaud, Ms. Boudreau, Ms. Steves, and myself in the affirmative. This is 4-2. Agenda item number 9, other committees, finance reports. So I'm going to do a combo here from the finance committee meetings. To me, September seems a long time ago. So just a brief review of the September Finance Committee minutes and what happened there. They have now been approved, these minutes. We approved the Faribault High School Music Department trip to New Orleans. We had an agreement, or shared agreements between the Faribault and the Healthy Community Initiative. We also shared agreements between the Faribault Public Schools and Riverbend Nature Center. We had an approval for the addition EL program for a 6/5 overload contract at the middle school. We approved our preliminary pay 25 tax levy there, and that's about it for the September minutes. The October minutes, which was just a week ago today, October 21st, at the Finance Committee meeting, we approved the Faribault High School Ag Department field trip to Ireland that we'll be working on here in a few minutes. With that, we approved the North Alexander Park Facilities Cooperative Agreement. I'm sorry, we did not approve that. We tabled that until the next financial meeting so we get more details with that. Our financial performance, our September student counts, we're happy to say that currently we are over our budgeted amount by 15 students, which is good news at this time, but that's where we're at in October. And then our comparative financial report, our self-insurance fund is positive, just almost 100,000 in the positive for the year. And looking through the expenses, we haven't seen an invoice yet for the September HVAC, electricity, and surprise snow removal. So it's good we haven't had any snow removal here through October yet. So with that, and then also in the committee, our investment report, our cash and investments are down about $1 million from August to September, mainly due to the expenses of the HVAC projects at the sites. So, and that's being paid through our maintenance bonds. So, Ms. Boudreau, anything I should have added or need to add that I missed?
I would just say that the ag trip is in 2026.
Yes, we'll get, yeah, that's right.
Long time out.
Great. Okay, with that, I'll go to other matters. 10A, Resolution 25-06, are gifts and donations. Resolution 25-06, the donations are as follows under this resolution. Deborah Barth donated used cameras and a tripod, estimated value of $370 to Faribault High School for the art department and yearbook. The State Bank of Faribault donated $384 to Lincoln for Mrs. Swanson's first grade class to provide each student with a book every month to build a home library. Periodkits.org donated 4 boxes of feminine hygiene products, estimated value of $400, to support students impacted by homelessness, unstable housing, domestic violence, and those struggling to meet their basic needs. Mike Palmquist donated 15 to 20 pairs of brand new shoes, 10 backpacks, and some clothing items, estimated value of $1,250 for students in need. The Faribault Booster Club donated $4,950 to Faribault High School for an ice machine. The Rotary Club of Faribault, the Faribault Rotary Youth Services, through our Warm Community Initiative, donated $16,000 in brand new coats, hats, mittens, snow pants, and boots for winter clothing for 240 Faribault students, pre-K through 5th grade. The Faribault Mill donated $12,000 through our community for winter blankets for 240 students, pre-K through 5th grade. And donations to the Nest, Period Kits Minnesota donated 7 large boxes of feminine hygiene products, and our Savior's Lutheran Church donated $500 to the Nest. Motion for approval of Resolution 25-06.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Any discussion? Discussion? Once again, thank you to everyone who donated and the organizations, individuals who donated to our Faribault Public Schools for our kids. Very important. Last call for discussion. Ms. Steves, this is a resolution. Roll call, please.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. John Bellingham.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Motion passes 6-0. Correct. Thank you. 10B, consider approval of the Ag Department extended field trip to Ireland. Motion for approval of the Ag Department extended field trip to Ireland.
Moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And discussion. I don't see Ms. Schultz here, but those dates are as Ms. Boudreau said, June 9th through, I know it's in 2026, 9th through, is it the 16th?
Yeah, the end date is open at this point,
Okay.
so it's the 9th through, and then they're looking to take roughly 10 to 12 students, and 0 days of school will be missed because
Right.
it'll be outside of the school year.
During spring break or?
No, after the school year.
And it's exploratory agricultural tour of Ireland. Students will tour the Irish racehorse experience, a day on a cattle farm, local farming and region, visit shellfish and seaweed farm, and sheepdog demonstration. We have all the rest of the details there. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Boudreau,
The students raised the money to go on their trip. This
That is-
not-
that is correct, yes.
Yes.
They estimate the cost per student, per person is $4,399, and there will be fundraising opportunities as well as potentials to partner with local ag commodity groups for scholarships for our students, very important there as well. So, and it's through EF Educational Tours that many of our students have gone through. Discussion. 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 Again, thank you to Ms. Schultz and the Ag Department for providing an opportunity for our kids possibly to expand their horizons with this. So, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 10C, consider approval of the HVAC projects for McKinley and Jefferson. Mr. Kane Smith, I do not see him here. Nope.
So moved.
Mr. Benty.
We need a motion. and a
Barbie,
second.
were you?
Oh,
Yeah.
so thank you. Let me get to, okay, so let's have a motion for approval of the HVAC projects for McKinley and Jefferson. Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Thank you, Ms. Boudreau, for the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. I got Ms. Steves for the second. Now discussion. Mr. Benty.
So this is just looking to, for an HVAC project to replace our 4 rooftop units with new, you can read it there, boiler system replacements in the boiler rooms and HVAC controls at McKinley. And then Jefferson HVAC project is 2 rooftop units, some minor duct modifications, and the HVAC controls and upgrades. So it's a continuation of the projects that we have been working on across the district for the last few years.
Discussion? 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 Great. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 10D, consider approval of the Minnesota State High School League Foundation Form A Board Resolution. Motion for approval of the Minnesota State High School League Foundation Form A Board Resolution, please. Also move approval with that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And any discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Gunderson usually presents this, but he is not well tonight, so he is staying home. It's actually just the resolution part. The numbers will be put in later as they are calculated. So that's why those are blank. And there are free and reduced lunch numbers that we have documented through the state. So for our activities piece of it, so.
In Form A, and I believe right now to be transparent, I'm going to read the resolution. Resolution for Form A is, whereas the Minnesota State High School League Foundation was formed to provide support for Minnesota's high school youth to participate in athletics and fine arts, whereas the governing board, name of school district, to be District 656, Faribault Public Schools District 656, recognizes the value of student participation in extracurricular activities, and whereas the Minnesota State High School League Foundation is offering grants and funding to assist schools in recognizing, promoting, and funding extracurricular participation by high school students in athletic and fine arts programs. Therefore, be it resolved that the governing board of Faribault Public School District supports the school's application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation. Discussion. Any further discussion? Discussion. Good, we're a quiet group tonight. Good. So it's a resolution. So Ms. Steves, we do a roll call, please.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
No.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. John Bellingham.
Aye.
Passes 5-1.
Thank you. 10E, consider approval of terms and conditions of proposed agreement with Local 70 nurses contract. So as we call Ms. Yoakum up to the table here, could I have approval of the terms and conditions of the proposed agreement with Local 70 nurses contract, please? Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And discussion. Ms. Yoakum, I'll simply give you some time to boot it up here and anything you outlay in the terms and conditions of this.
Okay, good evening. Thank you. So this is for our nursing group. There's about 9 members within this employment contract or employment group. And we had some very nice meetings with them and had some great conversations about their working conditions and just their overall experience and how their positions have been growing within our school system over the past several years. So overall, it was a great system, a great process that Mr. Daynor and I went through with our nurses. So in the economic items, you'll see that our total year 1 package is an increase of $35,332. It includes our actual insurance increase of 5% in year 1 that we actually realized from Blue Cross Blue Shield this year. Also a wage increase of 6% and some longevity adjustments. We, in year 2, had a total package increase of $22,497, which included, again, an increase to health insurance for year 2. We don't know those rates yet, but we did estimate an additional 5% in year 2 from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then a wage increase of 4%. Those were all of the economical related items. Just to kind of go back, so for the wage increase, we felt that was a good starting wage to help us recruit new nurses because we have seen quite a bit of turnover in those positions. And then the longevity, we felt strongly that that would help us in retaining our current staff. So those were the 2 main economic pieces that we focused on. So all of the language items, really, outside of cleaning things up for grammatical pieces, the other things were all in relations to our snow days and virtual learning days because we are really trying to eliminate having the old traditional snow days and going right to our Falcon Flex days. So we had to address how that would look with our nurses with those different having school in a virtual setting versus an in-person setting. So that's what those language items under item A and A refer to. Under letter B, that is addressing our paid absent leave and how many people can be out on a given day within a building. And then letter C was to address our current health and safety committee. The language was old and required an individual from that team to be on that committee, and we have other individuals from our health department now on that team. And then the last item, number 4, was just to clean things up within the contract in terms of grammar and so forth. But that really sums everything up. Do you have any questions at all in particular about this?
Ms. Yocum, board members, so at one of the negotiation sessions, the board negotiations team of Ms. Boudreau, Mr. Wolf, and myself did attend the negotiation session with that, and just to get some details and et cetera there, so just want to let you know that we were informed and involved in part of that process as well. So, questions or discussion here? Mr. Olson.
Yeah, I get really a personal issue with this, that nurses are great, especially at the high school. Related to my grandson, I think sometimes they save his life when he has some medical concerns. So to me, they're very precious. They're in contact with the students, and especially when they're not feeling good or when they have a medical emergency. I do have one concern is, of all the schools, do we have coverage when students are in school? Because in the past, there's been gaps for whatever reason. If somebody's sick or whatever, do we have coverage? That's my question.
Sure. So we do our best to make sure all of our nurses' offices are covered 100% of the time. That is not necessarily always manageable because we never know what building is going to get hit with the flu, or we have a couple nurses right now who are going through some continuing ed and turning their LPN license into an RN license, which is really cool for us. And also, we have two full-time float nurses that we've hired to help cover the buildings when we have absences and so forth. And those two individuals are also going to school to get their LPN license. And so our special services department does a really nice job putting it together and making sure that our students' needs are met. Could it be better? Yeah, absolutely. There's always room for improvement, but we do a nice job and make sure that we have people in those offices as much as possible. We also have trained people within each building to serve as backups. They go through some general health training with our health services department or our health coordinators, and those people are typically like a couple of designated paraprofessionals that can step in and be in the health office for some basic coverage as well. So there's a really good system to make sure that our needs are met as much as possible.
So we don't have to rely on outside sources to come in, like a nurse from whatever, or a retired nurse or somebody from the clinic saying, can you come in for a few hours?
No,
Do we do that or not?
We really haven't gotten to that level, no.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to
Ms. Boudreaux.
thank Ms. Yocum and Mr. Daynard for what their back and forth negotiating and working with the nurses it's been enjoyable. And I appreciate them, appreciate all of our staff, but they work, they're very diligent and cover much area. And so we're glad to have them here. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Last call for discussion on this agenda item. Seeing none, we have a motion for approval of the terms and conditions of the proposed agreement with Local 70 Nurses Contract. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we're going back to agenda item number 3. I saw there. So we have presentation of the MCEA 2024 project award to the district for the Multicultural Adult Drivers Education Program. And the presenter is Ann Faribault from MCEA board member and Winona County Community Education Director. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
It's close. It's Regal. I'm
Okay.
Ann Regal.
Regal, okay.
Yes.
Ann Regal, thank you. Well, welcome.
Yeah, I'm going to invite some of the members of this great project forward as well. So, as you said, my name is Ann Regal, and I'm the Community Education Director for Winona Area Public Schools. But in this role, I am the Region 1 board member for the State Minnesota Community Education Association. And it's my privilege to bring an award that was granted to Faribault Community Education last week at the state conference, one of 7. And I think that needs to be acknowledged by the board. This was one of 7 awards in the state that highlights outstanding projects ran by community education. So we have a lot to be proud of here. So the award was given to the Multicultural Adult Drivers Education Program that Faribault Community Education piloted when the state legislation put in a new statute supporting driver's license for all in 2023. And so just a couple of highlights. Faribault's program prepares adults to earn their license with a combination of support from their adult basic education, there's driver education, and their community outreach navigators. And we have 3 of the staff members here today, and I'm going to get everybody right. Joe, Cassie, and Jessica are here. They worked together, and they served over 346 individuals their first year. That is amazing. You should have a lot to be proud of in that program. It's a good example of how community education supports all learners. I'm looking at your mission, and I read the part that inspires, challenges, empowers all students to engage and grow as learners and citizens. This is a great example about how to do that for adult learners. The community education program is a highlight in the state, and it's an example to use for other education programs across not just this region, but across Minnesota. So it's something that's not just a nice little honor on their wall, but it's something they can be proud of, and you should be proud of in your community about how you're serving all adult learners as well. So congratulations, and congratulations to your staff.
So Cassie, Jessica, Joe, would you like to say anything?
Hello, Joe Pinka. I've taught driver's education in the district for 26 years. As much as I dislike being recognized, this is, yeah. This is a great award because something like this isn't just by one person, it's a team. We saw a need that the community needed and assembled a great team. And I think we were very successful. Zach Pruitt wrote a grant for this. I believe our goal was we wanted to serve, 25 people, and we did 346 or whatever it was. So we learned a lot along the way of how to change our instruction to fit the needs of the adults. And now we're in our second year, currently running a class for adults as well to get their permanent license. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica Velasquez, and I help Joe to translate during the class and to give the class in Spanish too. What I can say is living in Faribault for 27 years, I can recognize the difference of the people in power or the people in certain positions that is making this possible for adults to learn in a level that they can understand and they feel comfortable. Joe has done a great job with creating that environment with families, would tell their families. We have people who want us to go to Mankato, want us to go different places because there is a need, and the way that he teaches the class, he makes it possible for adults to learn. We know that it's not easy to have a full-time job, family, and then go to class for 2 hours. It's hard. But the way that Joe has created the class and the environment, I think families are taking it, and they're so thankful. So I have to say thank you for my families.
I will just reiterate kind of what Joe said. I've been in my role since 2018, and a need we have has always been driver's ed. Students would come to us, do you have permit class? Do you have driver's ed? That answer has always been no, but until this grant and partnership with Joe, I really didn't have a clue how to get a permit from an adult lens or how to structure a program. So working with Joe to develop a program, and then my skills of adult ed coordinating, finding the adults that want the classes, paired with Yeska's leadership in the community. Also, Abdi Abdullahi has been essential for our Somali driver's ed class as well. But it's just been an awesome partnership, and we hope to continue. We started our second year as of October 1st. I don't think we're going to hit the 346 this year because that was a very high need last year. But our goal this year, I believe, is 75 instead of 25. But I think we'll hit that target. Thank you.
And thank you for coming and presenting, and congratulations to all of you and the work you've put in and exceeded your goals. I can't even do the math with the percentage with that, but what an exceptional, and thanks to Zach Pruitt for writing the grant and getting all those things going as well. So thank you so much for making this possible for not only the district, but for our community as well. So thank you so much.
And Mr. Chair, I believe that our amazing communications director would like a picture. So.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. We have to come around the front, guys. Richard.
gonna sneak in the back.
No, they didn't.
But we were good at those.
Here goes the kids.
Board members, as we move on to agenda item 10F, reorganization update and reorganization options via rubric. It is, according to my cell phone, it is 7:15. We definitely, I know some people saying, "Why, we're really cranking along here," but this agenda item might take some time. So I'm going to issue a 10-minute recess for the board and the people there, people in the audience, and we will restart at 7:25. 7:25. Close. I call the meeting back to order. Item 10F, reorganization update and reorganization options via rubric. Mr. Benty, will you go in the hallway, see if Mr. Olson is still out there? Okay. So with this agenda item here, the process will be as follows. At our last last work session where we went through the questions that were presented to Mr. Benty, and we made it to beginning on page 5, which is option B. So in this process tonight, we are going to review the last pages of questions. After that, Ms. Steves and I have developed a rubric. I will explain that and distribute the rubric for the plans, and you and board members, you will fill them out. Upon filling them out, we will tally the data, and we will examine the data we received from the rubric and discuss. The goal here would be to come to a consensus to narrow our plan options to 2. That's my vision. So with that, Mr. Benty, we were on page 5, option B. You may take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to continue to go through the questions that the board had sent in. Last time we went through about 4 pages of questions and made it through option A. Just as a reminder, option A was the status quo option. That was where we don't change anything. We continue to run our grade levels the same as what we are currently. I also have program leads and principals here tonight in case there are any very specific questions that you have about certain things that we could bring them up. That was by request of Mr. Bellingham, our board chair. So they are available. Most of the questions around reorganization, like the process of it, will be either myself or perhaps a cabinet member that answers them. But if you have specific questions about buildings, we do have them here as well. So on page 5, we'll start with the option B questions. And to give everyone an update option or a reminder, option B is grade banding. That would be Roosevelt would be pre-K through kindergarten. Jefferson would be looking at grades 1 and 2. Lincoln would be grades 3, 4, and 5. There would be no changes at our middle school or high school for grades. We would be closing our ALC, and they would relocate to our current McKinley building. One of the questions, or I'll just start through the questions. What are the projected educational outcomes for this plan? So under option B, each elementary school would be able to focus on a specific grade band, enhancing targeted academic support and helping to enhance our PLC work that is done in each building. So what we're discussing with that is that under this plan, Jefferson would be able to devote its entire building to just looking at grades 1 and 2. So all students in that building would be at first or second grade level. What is the educational research with this? You're going to see this response a lot, and I won't read it every time, I promise. But I did read it last time, and I do want to read it again because it comes up over and over again with some of these. The research really is split. Some of the research says that the K-8 model is the best, while other research says that a separate middle school is better. This is the quote from the Brookings Institute that I believe says it best. It says, as at the district level, consideration should be given to alterations in grade configuration that benefit students and make sense given physical and financial constraints. And that's from Jacob and Rockoff in 2011. There's also a link there available for that you can read the entire thing if you would like. What are the estimated one-time costs? So at McKinley, art and science rooms and new restrooms would be, and I have updated numbers as of today, we would be looking at roughly $458,000. Now that is down from the $572,000. So I have Mr. Smith looking into this, why there was such a change. So I'm going to say it's somewhere between 458, which is the quote that he received today, and 572, which was the quote that we received back in January. McKinley, the kitchen upgrade, we were once quoting $120,000. That was simply for equipment. So when we look at equipment plus a lot of other pieces where it comes to flooring, perhaps electrical, and that we're going to actually be closer to about $470,000. And that will come out of fund number 2. So that will not impact the general fund. That will come out of our food service fund, which we along with many other districts have been desperately trying to spend down that fund. So that will, I know that sounds like a big number, but it does not impact our general fund, and will actually help us in that case. Continuing on with option B, the question was, what are the transportation costs? I met today with Garrett Regan and Faribault Transportation, and I gave them all 6 options, and I said, please take a look at these. Let me know what options are going to look like cost-wise and transportation-wise. So obviously, option A, there's no changes to our current situation. Option B, this is the most heavily modified system for transportation. Right. The Faribault Transportation loses the flexibility that they have to cover the whole town of Faribault with buses in order to transport to each school. So basically, the entire district becomes one zone for each school. There are no boundaries anymore. The boundaries simply become our district limits. So they have to run that for every single grade band. So they'd have to run that for Roosevelt, for Lincoln, for Jefferson, for the middle school, and for the high school. All right. It says more flexibility may be needed with the start and end times, so that we might have to stagger them. There may be students, potentially kindergartners, who would typically get a direct route to and from school that will now need to transfer through another transfer site. Okay. And buses may need to travel between schools, particularly if kindergarten students are required to be transported with their siblings. One of the things that I said was, I told them was a non-negotiable, was that kindergartners needed to ride with their siblings. To me, that was important. That does add costs, though. So if we're looking to mitigate some costs in this, it might be that we have to say kindergartners don't ride with their siblings, especially if kindergarten is going to be at a separate site. Okay, that I think is something for us to decide. Once the board decides which route it wants to go, that can be something we can decide. Would it cost more, and if so, is the board interested in paying more for that? All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms.
not all kindergartners have siblings.
Correct. At this point, approximately 50 families have a kindergartner that has an eligible riding sibling that is in school. So that would be about one out of every 4 of our kindergartners. Okay. It says between the 5 options, this is most likely the scenario that the busing company would need to add an additional route. An additional route would cost $67,000. So when you look at the option B, the option B grade banding budget, that is not calculated in there because I just got this afternoon. So you would need to take that $690,000 and take $67,000 off of that. Okay. It also says, using this scenario, it would require students and families to learn new routing information 3 times within their K through 5th grade careers rather than just once.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Would this increase student time actually on the bus?
This would potentially increase student time on the bus, yes, because one bus might be picking up for all of Faribault, instead of having a zone of Faribault that it picks up to go to. There, like I said, there's not going to be any borders anymore based on Lincoln or Jefferson. It's one big border for each school. So whether you live in the country or you're up to a mile away, you're going to be on one or two buses that bring you into your school.
You were mentioning kindergartens have to transfer, maybe?
Potentially, yes.
Kindergartners,
Yes,
they're 5 years old.
yes. So.
They do it now, don't they?
What are the barriers to younger students being housed in upper levels? I said if this is in reference to Roosevelt, which I believe it is, then I would say little. The Roosevelt building was designed for quick exit with stairwells. It is actually one of our safest buildings that has many different stairwells for students that lead out the back as well of the building, for students to have quick access out of the building. All right. Would there be room for three-year-olds and pre-K at Roosevelt? And I said, yes, under this one, all early childhood, pre-K, and kindergarten could be housed at Roosevelt. And that goes for all the different scenarios in which Roosevelt is a pre-K and K site. What are the logistics of this? I wasn't exactly sure what that question meant, so I don't know who asked that, or but I'm more than willing to answer that. I just wasn't exactly sure what it was you were looking for. In option B, we will need one principal for the kindergarten class of roughly 200 students. It shows that we would eliminate a dean position, but the principal would only have 200 students. Jefferson and Lincoln would have 412 and 585 students. Actually, those are a lot more. Those are pretty close to actually what the numbers would be. I realize both of those schools would have two administrators, a principal and a dean. I wasn't exactly 100% sure what the question was in there, but that is correct. The principal that would be overseeing Roosevelt would have other duties along with being a principal, a kindergarten principal, I should say. Those would range from kindergarten recruitment, right? So work in the teaching and learning department, setting up like kindergarten roundup, getting out and doing meet and greets, basically getting our students into kindergarten, because our data shows once we get them into kindergarten, then we retain them at very high percentages. Any questions on option B before I move to option C?
With option B, you're eliminating neighborhood schools, right?
Yes. All options except for option F would eliminate what we currently have as neighborhood schools. And option A, I should say, which is the do nothing option.
So the estimated one-time costs within this plan, I understand the build-out costs, the kitchen upgrade, the potential for transportation. Do you have an estimate on how much it would cost to pay teachers to move classrooms?
I do not have that cost estimate.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I have not costed out that. I don't, Nicole, we haven't costed out that yet, have we? No.
Okay.
If that is a question that we would like answered, we can do an estimate on what we would think that would look like.
Okay.
Is that something the board would like to see?
I think it's important to know the cost of, the one-time cost of, in the grade banding option, yes.
Well, that would be for all options, and for any time that we would be moving teachers out of a building to another building, that cost would be the same for some options, but not for all options.
I believe it should be mentioned, should be calculated or estimated, yes.
All right. So, Miss Jamie, can you make sure that I work on that this week, please? Other questions for B? All right, option C are the next questions that come up. As a reminder, option C is that Roosevelt becomes a pre-K through kindergarten site. Jefferson and Lincoln are both grades 1 through 4. The middle school is grades 5 through 8. The high school has no grade changes. The ALC current site will be closed, and they would move to McKinley. What are the projected educational outcomes for this plan? I said the educational outcome of this plan would help with the transition of students to middle school. They would spend their 5th grade year at Faribault Middle School under an elementary model and would then shift to a middle school model in 6th grade. The idea is to help with the adjustment to middle school. The educational research with this plan, it's the same as the previous one. Like I said before, the research is split, and that article is linked in there. What are our estimated one-time costs with this plan? Once again, exact same costs at McKinley for the upgrade of the art and science and classrooms and restrooms, and the same cost at McKinley for the kitchen. There would not need, would there be a cost to renovate 5th grade areas? There would not need to be a need to renovate any classrooms for 5th grade. So, the next question on here, what do current 5th grade teachers think of this option? I have not involved the 5th grade teachers in this. We can absolutely send out a survey to them if they are interested in that, but that is not something that I have done at this point. Would 5th grade students have access to band and other electives? Only if additional teachers would be hired to teach this for band. Phy-Ed, art would already be covered by the current FTE. So if we were looking to expand band or orchestra or those other elective areas to 5th grade under this model, it would require that we hire more FTE. If we do option C, what does this look like from a lunch standpoint? Adding roughly 250 students to the middle school will cram the current lunches or force some students to eat very early. What would this schedule look like? If we move 5th grade to the middle school, is there any programming benefit with regards to the arts, music, Phy-Ed, where we would get increased time in any of these? Dr. Fox is in our audience here. She is much more well-versed at the middle school schedule. I believe that you also discussed this at our last meeting. Would you like her to come forward and explain it again?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Dr. Fox, would you like me to read it again, or are you okay?
Nope, I pulled it up. All right. Do you want to ask? Oh, do you want to ask the questions, or do you just want me to answer what I see in front of me?
I would say just answer what's in front of you there.
All right. So Jesse Armbruster last year created several lunch schedules, and we would have to push them a little earlier. We do have to work within the time frame of Sodexo, so we would have to both have larger lunches and push students a little earlier. But we could work around that with something like snacks in the afternoon or something like that.
How early would the first lunch be?
That is a really good question. I believe, and I was just trying to look it up, but I believe right now our earliest one is right around 10:45, so it would be about 10:20, 10:15.
Isn't that a little early?
It's brunch.
Mr. Olson, if I may add something, when I taught, my class ate at 10:10 every morning. 6th grade.
Which is why we would have to look into having some sort of snack provided in the afternoon for those.
We had 6 lunches, so.
Yeah, for the little ones that had brunch.
What would be the latest lunch?
Yeah, so we looked at that too, and because we are the drop-off site for buses, we do have to be careful with the schedule that way too. And again, keeping within the time frame of Sodexo, I believe our latest lunch would end up being about 1:15.
Is there any increase in Sodexo cost? That's something we should look at.
Not as long as we stay within those time frames, then we're fine. It's when we start venturing outside of those time frames that I believe that we incur additional costs.
Do you want me to keep running through the questions, or are
Yes,
you good with
please.
me?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
What would the schedule look like? I think it kind of depended on how you wanted us to set it up. If we had a separate fifth grade area, I would have to learn how to schedule elementary. I'd have to work with my counterparts back there to figure out how to schedule fifth graders. But we'd try and keep it, according to the research, keep fifth grade kind of a self-contained elementary-esque schedule, and then let sixth, seventh, and eighth grade continue to be a middle school schedule. And so there'd be a learning curve, but we love to learn in schools. If we move the fifth grade to the middle school, would there be any programming benefits with increased time? We would need extra FTE for that. Liz Barron does a great job recruiting. She's a fantastic music teacher, and she is booked solid. So if we were to, expand our band, we'd have to hire another band teacher to expand that programming. And the same thing with the arts, music, and PE. My PE teachers now have about 30 to 34 students in their classes right now. And so to ask them to take on extra students, we would either have to jam-pack their classes even bigger, or hire additional FTE to cover that from our current, unless we, I worked with the elementary folks to get traveling teachers. And then the same thing with art. We'd have to get creative with the art room, because it is used 5 out of the 7 periods of the day by our art teacher. So we would have to look at what that would look like.
Dr. Robichaud.
Sure, thank you. I asked this last time, Dr. Fox, and I'm still curious. If fifth graders were to move to the middle school, could you foresee any possibility where the fifth graders would be in a self-contained classroom, except for like science and other kinds of activities, where they would actually be in a science lab for their science class? So they would be able to expand that beyond what's available in a self-contained classroom?
Yeah, currently all of our science classrooms are being used, but it's something where if someone was on a prep, we would love to have them use those classrooms and expand their abilities in science. We don't have the setup right now because our pods are 4 classes, and so if I'm asked to put 6 fifth grade classrooms, we'd have to have spillover into another hallway, so we wouldn't be able to do just a fifth grade hallway. It would have to be like fifth grade and a half.
The same thing with an art class, being able to go in a classroom, or art classroom for art rather than having it in their self-contained.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see that as a possibility?
I do, yeah. And like I said, we could, because we have a 7-period day, and our art teacher teaches 5 out of those 7 periods, but there are 2 periods where, she's on prep and doing CPT, that art room would be open.
If I can share just an additional question. If a teacher is identified, and we talked a little bit about advanced placement, so to speak, if you saw a fifth grader that was really knocking the socks off of any kind of standardized test, would there be a possibility of enrolling that student in a 6th grade math class or even a 7th grade math class if they were really accelerating in those academic areas?
Yeah, that would be something I would have to work with the T&L team on, but I think that's a possibility at any point for a student who's not going to, because usually if they're doing that well in math, they're doing that well in everything else.
But right now, it's not physically possible because they'd have to leave Jefferson or Roosevelt. If they're in the middle school, it would just be a walk down the hall. Thank you.
But also, Dr. Fox, aren't we dealing with, or one of the things I'll bring up, dealing with 2 separate amount of contact time between secondary and elementary? An elementary teacher is 27 and a half hours of contact time, 5.5 hours a day. Pretty much all subjects are taught by them with the exception of music, art, and Phi-Ed. Media time is, SETIS media is science/science, STEM, whatever, with that. So there's 2 different amount of contact times and hours and et cetera there. So to say we'll move to the music room, it's still going to be that one classroom teacher teaching the science or the math, and then with the amount of minutes we focus on reading and math and language arts. As I explained last time, not a lot of room for anything else to be taught, outside of those requested minutes. Would be you'd be dealing
Yeah,
with
so
that.
like when it asks for expansion, like we can't expand minutes, like Mr. Bellingham pointed out. We wouldn't be able to expand minutes or anything like that, but we would at some point still be able to offer like a music service and an art service. It wouldn't be expanded. It would just be a continuation of what they have before.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Dr. Fox.
Thank you.
Mr. Benty?
So that is all the questions for option C. Any other questions around option C? Okay, moving on to questions around option D. Option D is labeled our previous plan. This is the plan that was presented back in January and early February to the school board. In this plan, Roosevelt is a pre-K through kindergarten center. Jefferson and Lincoln are both grades 1 through 5. The middle school and the high school have no grade changes. The ALC site is closed down, and the programming moves to the McKinley building. So option D, what are the projected educational outcomes of this plan? The educational outcomes of this plan are to maximize space efficiencies across the district and to centralize our early childhood, pre-K, and kindergarten programming into one building, offering better and more consistent programming for our earliest learners. This plan also allows for enrollment growth across the spectrum of all grade levels. So when you look at all the different plans, some of them you'll see that the enrollment numbers are lower in some buildings than in others. This allows, if we do have increased growth across our district, this allows it to be at any level. Okay. The educational research, with this plan, it's the same response as the previous two. The research is split. What are the estimated one-time costs? Same. Remember, those numbers there have been updated. Okay. And that is the last question for option D. Any other questions that you had around option D or the previous plan?
Mr. Chair, how do you respond to parents? They live over by Roosevelt, a block away, and they're sending their first and fifth graders to another school, the other side of town. How do you respond to that?
And I would say that is a very real piece that happens in many different districts, depending on how their borders are drawn. So under this system, Roosevelt would not be a school that had first through fifth graders in it. So I don't think it would be any different of an explanation than saying, my students, we live a block away from Lincoln, but my kids are in middle school. So it would just have to become understood that those schools service those grade levels, which I think would be difficult for people in the first few years, but then we would start to understand the new system that is in place.
Would they understand it, though? We've always had neighborhoods, in fact, quite a few. And through some bad decisions years ago, we eliminated some schools. They were true neighborhood schools where you get to know the teachers from one grade to another, and you knew exactly where your kid was going to be first. Of course, way back was through sixth grade.
Yeah, and I believe it was probably pushing 30 years ago now that we had neighborhood schools. Yeah.
The mid-90s that...
when we would have had Garfield and Washington, and McKinley would have been a school as well, as was Nurstrand. So we would have had true neighborhood schools back up until, I would say, the mid-90s. If you're asking about the true neighborhood school thing, I would say that when those schools closed, that the neighborhood school kind of piece went with it for the most part. I think some of it stayed with people that live around the school, but we are also busing students to Roosevelt that don't live anywhere near Roosevelt. currently. So
That was to even out diversity.
I don't know. I wasn't superintendent at that time, so I don't know what
That's
those
what it
decisions
was.
were made. So
That's what it was.
So, Mr. Chairman, how many people are bused into Roosevelt? I think you have that figure, because we kind of keep getting stuck on this neighborhood school thing. And it's impossible because our schools don't offer kindergarten through 12th. So you have to move, your child has to go to another school for middle school, for high school. I'm just wondering how many are bused into Roosevelt.
From the data I received prior to our previous meeting, October 7th, from Faribault Transportation, was 380 students are qualified to be bused to Roosevelt, 380. So if you went, that Roosevelt has 507 students, that's 75% of those students are bused in. If you went with 447, that means 85% of those students are bused into to Roosevelt.
Okay, thank you.
That's the data I have there.
any other questions for option D? Okay, questions around option E. Remembering option E is moving the ALC to the middle school. So under this plan, Roosevelt would be a pre-K through kindergarten site. Jefferson and Lincoln would both be grades 1 through 5. The middle school would stay 6 through 8 and would add our ALC program. There would be no grade changes at the high school. We would be able to close our ALC site as well as closing our McKinley site. What are the projected educational outcomes for this plan? The educational outcomes of this plan are to maximize space efficiencies across the district and to centralize our early childhood pre-K and kindergarten programming into one building, just like the previous plan. This plan also allows for enrollment growth across the spectrum of grade levels while allowing Faribault schools to downsize 2 locations. Now, with that being said, I also want to caution that it would increase the size of our middle school facility to a level that if we were to grow at the middle school level or at the grade school level, it would potentially push us over capacity at our middle school. Okay. The educational research on this, once again, it's split, and the same information is available there. Questions around option E. One of the pieces that I did want to, because I'm struggling to remember if I said this or not, and I'm looking back, and I did say option E, just keep in mind facility adjustments. Significant renovations would be needed at the middle school to accommodate ALC students. We have not brought anyone in to cost that out for us because we honestly don't know what that would look like at this point.
Mr. Benty, those accommodations could be 1, parking lot, whole new construction of a parking lot, and 2 separate entrance.
Yeah, so looking at the way that the middle school is currently set up, when we looked at this a few years ago, the first piece that came up was a parking lot would be needed because obviously middle school students don't drive to school. So we would need a parking lot for our ALC students that would drive to school and a separate entrance and exit for them. One of the pieces to keep in mind also is that our middle school only has 2 banks of restrooms. So for us to be able to say that we are going to wall off a certain area of our middle school, that's simply not possible. It's not possible in the sense that our ALC students as well as our middle school students would need access to the restrooms, to the cafeteria, and to the gyms, which are on the other side of the building. So both sets of students would need access to areas that are all across the building. So walling it off and saying that we're going to physically separate them would not be a possibility.
Thank you.
Any other questions around option E? Okay. Option F, our final option, is 3 elementary schools. So with this being said, Roosevelt, Jefferson, and Lincoln would all be pre-K through 4th grade. Right? The middle school would change to grades 5 through 8. The high school would have no grade changes. Our ALC site would close, and the program would move to McKinley. What are the projected educational outcomes? For this plan, it says, my answer is, while people are comfortable with this organization of grades, there would be a loss of budget savings due to efficiencies. We would still need to cut approximately $600,000, losing more FTE and opportunities and programs for students and families across our district. Right. What is the educational research? It's the same response. The research is split. What are the estimated one-time costs with this plan? I did write down here none, but that is not taking into account the fact that McKinley would need to be upgraded. So it would be the same McKinley upgrades that would be from the other options, as well as the cost that we have not costed out yet, or the one-time cost of moving teachers. Okay. Would Roosevelt house the 3-year-old and pre-K programming? Yes, Roosevelt would house the 3s, and then we would look at 4 and 5-year-old programming in the other buildings, I believe is how it would fit. Okay, we tested, and Olivia, correct me if I'm wrong, we tested having 3-year-olds in our elementaries, not last year, but the year before, and it just didn't work out well. Yeah, okay. So we kind of learned from that, so we would be looking to keep our 3-year-olds at Roosevelt, and then move our 4 and 5-year-olds into the other buildings. Reorganization appears to me a facility reorganization, not a grade reorganization. The efforts to downsize the number of buildings is driving how we structure our grades. The options appear to be a cost savings move. I have no disagreement with cost savings as long as it does not negatively impact student achievement. Therefore, I would appreciate seeing an authentic research that is driving these grade structures. What's the proposed in the will what is proposed in the 6 options enhance student achievement or have a negative impact? And I linked that same research article in there because Dr. Fox and I worked on the research around this, and it was honestly what it came down to was, what do you want me to tell you? What do you want to know? What do you want it to be? And I can find the research to prove what it is you want. And if one board member wants it to say one thing and one board member wants it to say something else, I can find that. So it really came down to, like I said, that quote from Jacob and Rockoff, which was, at the district level, consideration should be given to alterations in grade configuration that benefit students and make sense given physical space and financial constraints. Mr. Chair, that is all of the questions that I had. That was all 10 pages of them.
Mr. Benty, I have a question regarding option F.
Yes.
I see Ms. Sage and Ms. Engbret here. I would just like to know their thoughts on having their program in three different buildings and how you could properly administrate that and make it effective for kids.
Hi. I'm struggling to find the right words because while I think we have done pretty well being in many different locations already, that is splitting us up quite a bit. And I've struggled to find how not having a centralized location somewhere would be beneficial when these kids are just starting off in our district. Do you have anything to add?
I think while we have done our best in making sure that the needs of our students, especially those in special education, are receiving the best services possible, there are efficiencies that could be implemented if we were to have all of our team together, and allowing for maximizing of the staffing that we currently have so that if caseloads are lower in one area, perhaps a teacher could then step in to support rather than having to continue to expand staffing to support appropriate programming services across 3 different buildings. We are also a very strong team that provide a great deal of collaboration. We have a number of our providers, especially in special education, that are already currently having to travel across buildings in order to provide services. That is a constant complaint that we receive, that they feel pulled in a multitude of directions and not able to provide the appropriate level of supports that could best benefit students. Our social worker is responsible for programming in 3 buildings. She tries to set a schedule that allows for appropriate staffing, and then a crisis occurs in another building and she needs to abandon the current building she's in order to address that crisis across town. Our occupational therapists, our physical therapists are going between buildings. In addition to the programming that we have within the Faribault Public Schools, we are also responsible for programming of students with special education needs in community placements as well. So at Head Start, at some of the private daycares, we had a speech therapist last year who was providing support to students in 8 different locations. We have had wonderful support from our special education leadership, and we have been able to obtain additional speech support this year. But those providers are still, even the way that we are now, going to multiple sites. If we could diminish the time spent on the road, the mileage that's accrued, the ability to team together and meet the needs, I think that we could create an even better program than we already have.
Also, I would just like to also add one piece of this too is our early childhood screening program operates out of McKinley. So having a central location for early childhood would be beneficial for families across the community that are accessing our early childhood screening as a requirement to enter kindergarten.
And do you foresee having a centralized location that growth would expand more than it is currently is already for your programs?
Yes.
I had many more questions about special ed, but Ms. Ingrid answered them very well. So it's because it's not, we're doing physical therapy and some learning therapy for the special ed as well, correct?
We provide whatever the services that the child is eligible for. So we have physical therapy, occupational therapy, we have deaf, hard of hearing staff, we have vision impaired staff, we have speech therapy. We have children who require behavior supports from our school psychologists and our school social workers. And the elementaries have been nice partners with us, but they have enough of their own students that they are responsible for, that sometimes having a couple of extra classes isn't where the priorities are able to be placed. By having us all together, we are a stronger team that is providing better programming for our youngest learners, and we are the gateway into the Faribault Public Schools.
And the possible equipment that's needed for some physical therapy, it
Sharing
might be
of
in one building, but not in
resources.
another. Okay, very good.
Sharing of resources.
Thank you.
And I'll just remind the board, and I've tried to stay neutral in this as much as possible, unless I'm directly asked which one is my professional pick. Remember that early childhood came to us and did a wonderful presentation earlier this year around the growth that they are making and are ready for kindergarten programming. They are truly setting our students up to be more successful in kindergarten, and we know that it's a program that we are looking to expand. I'm going on a bit of a bird walk here. I will say I was quite upset with the legislature that they did not increase funding for pre-K programming to the level that I believe it was needed. But I believe that will be fixed in the future, or with some of our budget savings, we might decide that we would wish to fund more in that area and be able to reach out to more of our students earlier. So any one of these options that allows us to have a pre-K and K center, I think is a huge advancement for this community.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you,
sorry,
ladies.
this is going to be kind of a dumb question for Mr. Bunty, and maybe you guys could help. At one time, there was a cap of like 80 for VPK.
For voluntary pre-kindergarten
Okay.
seats. That has increased, and that number is directly based off of our current kindergarten enrollment. So with declining kindergarten enrollment, that number could go down. We did receive additional seats this year, so we're able to serve more students this year. It increased to 92 or 93. 92.
Additionally, we also do have programming that has a tuition tied to it as well. So we are not limited by our VPK seats. They are just one component of the ways in which we can support families in accessing services.
So what would be your estimation for preschool, 4-year-old, 5-year-old preschool?
So just looking at VPK classes?
Either or.
So currently we have 12 classes. That includes our special education classes, our half-day programming for 3s and 4s, and then our all-day 4-year-old programming. That's divided up in the district. We would look first at probably implementing another 3-year-old program to help feed our 4-year-old programming, but then ultimately would like to expand our VPK seats and our 4-year-old programming into 1-2 more classes at least.
Math today. What would be the approximate number for 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds?
So we're looking at, we serve around 200 students, 200 to 220 students right now.
Okay.
We'd increase that at least to like 250.
Okay. And approximately 90, you said, are VPK students. So no tuition is paid for those students, correct? Okay.
Right, yeah.
That answered it. Perfect. Thanks.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you very much. From my chair, there's one other avenue or piece here that, and he sat here very patiently for the last 2 meetings, maybe 3, Mr. Hager, Jake Hager from the ALC. If you would come up here, because obviously with some of these plans, we have ALC involved deeply in these plans, somewhere, somehow. So tell us what research says about what the program needs and what your vision is for the program, et cetera.
I think what we see with ALCs is that ALCs do need to be in their own separate building. When you look at ALCs, well, around Minnesota that are programs within programs, what you often see is, well, the programs just aren't as big. When you look at the program that Faribault's had for the last 40 or 50 years, we are one of the bigger programs in the state of Minnesota. And I think one of the big reasons why we have grown to be the size that we are is the ability to create the culture that we have at the ALC. And the big reason that we have that is being able to build a program with the beliefs in mind that we've had for the last, 50 years under the leadership of Jeff, having Margaret, so on and so forth. So when it comes to meeting the needs of at-risk kids, we really have to be able to embrace the alternative views with, education in mind. Being able to focus on the mental health supports first, having the spaces to bring in those supports, to allow the students to have access to those services during the school day. So.
You've answered what I had in my mind, so thank you. Mr. Olson.
So you would favor moving ALC to McKinley, right?
Yes.
Now, there was an idea of moving it to the middle school. What's your opinion on that?
I mean, in all honesty, can we provide the services we provide in many different settings? Yes. Do I think we can provide those services as well at the middle school? No. Do I think we can have the program that we have, the size that we have, and provide those services there? No.
But basically with the ALC, you're mixing adults with children, basically, right? Unless you build a separate building, attach onto the middle school, then what would be the advantage of that? I don't see an advantage if you want to build something. But
And that was, one of the pieces that I stayed away from was anytime we had to break ground.
That's it.
Because as soon as we break ground, we're talking about millions upon millions of dollars that would come either out of a bond community or would come out of our general fund. So I stayed away from anything that would require building. So.
But McKinley would be isolated enough for you, right? And your students?
I think it would be optimal. A lot of our families that are enrolled at the LC, that is the area that they live.
So they could walk there a lot easier than where you are right now.
Yes, I think it would help a lot with the transportation. So.
Mr. Hager, ALC enrolls students from other districts as well, too. Do we get kids from Kenyon, Waterville, Northfield, et cetera, right?
Yep, we have some from Northfield, Medford, Janesville, Waterville, and Waseca right now.
Excellent.
Yep.
What's your current population?
Like number of students?
Yes.
122.
Okay. That's about the average, usually, about 120?
We're usually right around 120, 125.
Okay. Anything further? Thank you, Mr. Hager, very much.
Thanks.
Okay, board members, it's time. Done with this. As I said when we began this agenda item, and thank you, Mr. Benty, for going through the questions and explanations here. In your packets, you do have, as Ms. Kenny, you do have the printed version handouts here of the reorganization options. Because what we're going to do now is as I said before, Ms. Steves and I have developed a rubric. First of all, a little history with the rubric. The rubric has 4 criteria. Not yet. Still got the teacher hat. If you pass them out, they're going to start in it. See, 4 criteria, and it's based on the goals. You would. It's big. 36 years, I haven't lost it. Okay. It's based on the goals or objectives laid out to Mr. Benty to form a committee, and what were the 4 objectives of the reorganization plan. We will score each plan on those 4 criteria from 1 to 5, your choice. And then at the end, and then you will add them up, and we will write them on the poster board over here. And because in our playbook, we make decisions by data-driven decisions, we will have a discussion on that data. So now, Ms. Steves, if you would. You don't need to put your name on them or anything. I got one already, but you're good. If you'll notice in your packet, you have 6 pages. Each page has its own plan. There you can see it. So the first page is option A, the status quo option. Coincides with your printed option plans here. Notice the criteria optimizes educational outcomes. Notice we have the terms minimal defined down there, and notice also what has been used is potential of some positive outcomes, potential of moderate outcomes, potential of significant outcomes, potential of transformative impact, etc. So just because we have a plan here and we're just going to, you say, well, we're just moving kids. Once we move kids, what really are the potential for that plan with that move? Second criteria is operational efficiency and cost effectiveness. The third criteria is smooth transition for students across grade levels. And the fourth criteria is align resources to support student needs. So with that, you go through each one on option A here, optimizes educational outcomes. You select a 1 through 5, put your score in the right-hand side. Same thing with the other 3 criteria, put a score there, and would you please add them up when you get done at the bottom of that. And then you have the 6 plans.
Mr. Chair, I do believe I need to make one correction,
Yes.
is that they do need to put their names on them.
Oh, okay.
We cannot have a private,
There you go.
secret vote, so.
Okay. Well, we're going to put them up on the board anyway, but
Yes.
go ahead, put your name on your packet. I thought once the teacher would have to tell kids to put their name on their packet, but it didn't happen. Okay. So if you'd fill that out now, if you have any questions, get hold of Ms. Steves or myself. So we'll just go on a quick, we'll go to a recess here for about 10 minutes. So Nasco, if you just want to pause, that would be okay, and we'll come back when everyone's finished.
Mr. Chair, do you want anything up on the screen, like the community survey, or the committee survey, I should say, or anything, or?
That would be great. Nasco, if you could put up the reorganization committee ratings, that would be good. Is that what you're asking for, Mr. Smith? Yeah. I'm not sure.
Well, since you
I say we collect them. Okay, we'll come out of that little work session here. So the process now will be is that we will go each individual board member and you'll simply read off your score for each option. So before we do that, just to preface it, one, I would like to thank Mr. Benty for the work y'all have done on this reorganization option from, I think we did this in March or April again, so thank you. Thank you to the committee. 30-some people or more, thank you for your time, your efforts, opportunity, seeing the big picture, hopefully, and presenting in a very professional manner. So I just wanted to thank that, and so whatever scores come up that, however each board member feels, whatever, I truly believe that this board has vetted this process, and from the information we've been supplied, very, very well. So with that, because now we have technology, and I wanted that board, but we're ruled over here, so we will simply go through as we vote for a roll call. Ms. Steves will call your name, and you'll simply say your number for option A, B, etc. And Cassie, I'll turn it over to you. So do we have are we going to put that up on this? There we go.
All right. So this is for option A, which is
Status quo option.
Status quo option. Linda Boudreau, 4. Dr. Moore.
So let's have her do all of them going across.
Oh, all of
Will
them.
that work?
Oh.
Yep.
Option B.
16.
Option C. 4. Option D.
20.
Option E.
4.
Option F.
4.
Dr. Moore.
Okay, option A, 10,
Option B.
11,
Option D.
13,
Option D.
16,
Option E.
13,
Option F.
11.
Richard Olson. Option A.
12,
Option B.
9,
Option C.
4,
Option D.
20,
Option E.
4,
Option F.
4.
Dr. Robichaud. Option A.
8,
Option B.
13,
Option C.
11,
Option D.
14,
Option E.
4,
Option F.
8.
So I've got option A as 9, option B as 10, option C as 11, option D as 12, option E as 6, and option F is 13. Someone reading?
I have Chad's, yes.
Okay.
I met with Chad and distributed this, and he gave it to me before he left. So, option A, 13,
Option B,
16,
option C,
13,
option D,
17,
option E,
8,
option F.
12.
Mr. Bellingham?
Option A, 12,
Option B,
15,
option C,
12,
option D,
18,
option E,
10,
option F.
11. Thank you, board members. So from the data, from what we see,
Mr. Chair, could we have a printout of this?
Certainly, yet tonight you want?
Whenever.
It'll be on board book, right, Ms. Kenny? It'll be on board book, or
Okay.
that would probably be easy to get on board book, and we can make a copy for you. How's that?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So, because as we said with our playbook, we are looking at data. So from this, looking at this data, obviously as we go, looking at me pointing to the screen, here. Sorry, thank you, NASCAR. You're good. We have option D, very strong. In fact, I see if we go through each individual scores, 17 to 20 is a strong plan. And so the majority of us have it as a pretty strong plan with there. And then also the second, coming in second, is option B, which is the grade banding, coming in at 90. So looking at this, facilitating this, looking at option A, C, E, and F. Could we say that to come to a consensus that options D and B would be our two, our highest scoring, obviously with that, would be our preferred options for a vote?
The
Discussion.
scores say what it is.
I was gonna say, I don't know what else to add, Richard, I just, to be honest with you there. So,
Do you want a motion?
and no, we're not gonna vote on it tonight, because it's not on the agenda.
Right.
So is this, anybody wish to, could I have those back up, please, NASCO? Cool, so do we have any comments, anything with this?
So do you want to clarify the process and what you're thinking to do this? Or is there any point within the next few weeks that a staff survey can be put out with
Yes,
the
there is.
narrowed down plans?
Yes. So with this data and information, board members, I believe we've come to a consensus of options D and B with, I see nodding of heads, consensus with that. So with that, I'm going to announce that I'm calling a special meeting on Tuesday, November 12th at 4:30 p.m. The agenda item will be to vote on the two option plans, option D or option B. I selected that date because the board will need to be here at 5:30 for canvassing the election results, and then I believe I have a work session planned after that, so it seems like everyone
So
would be.
4:30.
4:30.
Then
Then we'll begin our canvassing of the election, whatever, at 5:30. We'll begin our work session and canvassing elections with that.
And could Jamie send all that information out?
Yes, certainly will. So noting that, I've called a special meeting. Then, for everyone else, for the public, for people in attendance, once again, as always, the board is accessible to your comments and thoughts. Here's your communication to us via email, calls, other sorts of communication you'd like to present to us regarding the two options that we've come to consensus with. Option D, no, wait a minute, all right, D and B, right? So this is your opportunity. Please send us the emails, whatever. If you send to the entire board, the board will not respond. I'll respond. If you wish to communicate separately with the board member, you may do so after sending it. But board members, when you do receive communication, if you'd forward it to all board members, et cetera, I think everyone deserves to know the communication you're getting as a preferred option plan there. I think that would just be good with that.
So, Mr. Chair, you mean if somebody sends us a personal email, the teachers or anything, even the parents, we are to forward it then?
Certainly. Yeah. Maybe they'll just do the entire board or whatever they want to do with that. Okay.
Sometimes they do it separately.
Anything else on 10F? Organization. And again, I just want to thank the people on this board. It's been a very grueling process, still is, but I think it's been we've vetted it very well. 10G, move to a closed session as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13D.03 for negotiation strategies with paraprofessionals. Could I have a motion to move to a closed session as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13D.03 for negotiation strategies with paraprofessionals? We have a motion by Mr. Olson. Do we have a second? Dr. Moore, thank you. Any discussion? Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We will now go to closed session. Thank you all for attending.
It's okay, I just jumping the gun.